Welcome to the Inspiring Founders podcast. My name is Michael Ashley. Everyone calls me MASH. I'm your host. And today we are in Silicon Valley with Raymond Cheng, the founder of Decrypt Compliance. And we're going to have a discussion about his journey as a new founder, his journey through business school and getting a job afterwards, and then deciding that it was time to move on and found his own company. We're also going to talk about AI. And this is really interesting to me because one of the things that Raymond told me is that they use AI in a unique way to serve their customers. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to find out a little bit about how AI is really making a difference in the startup journey and also how he is using it specifically to solve some challenges. Raymond, thank you so much and welcome to the podcast. Can you tell everybody, and you don't have to look at the camera if you don't want to or whatever, we're gonna have a nice conversation. Can you tell everybody just sort of a little bit about your journey, how you got to the place where you were able to start Decrypt? Because you told me you're a new founder, and so it's not usual that somebody kind of goes from a really cush job, which I imagine you had after business school, to someone who said, hey, I'm gonna risk it all.
No. Wow. All right. Where to start? I guess from the beginning, huh? Well, so so to start off, I did my undergrad at Santa Clara University, and I went to the business school. So I like to think that I had somewhat of a foundation to get things going. But the past couple of years running Decrypt Compliance has been amazing, like a huge learning experience, a very, very different set of new pressures than when I was working salary jobs. So when I exited Santa Clara University, came with my bachelor's degree, I got into big four accounting and consulting firms, and I was working on Ernst & Young. So the stuff that I was doing at EY is pretty much what our business is doing today, just at a slightly smaller scale and a more specialized, personalized way.
Wait. I got to pause for a second. EY is like a dream job for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I teach at San Jose State University. I have a lot of students, and they tell me, Nash, I'm trying everything I can to get into EY. An internship, I'll work for free, I'll do anything. So there are people out there who would love to be in your place. So what happened? How did this evolve from like, hey, I'm doing this really killer stuff to, I got to do my own business?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that it's a combination of everything has a place within my career journey when I look back at it. I don't think I knew it at the time, but the first few years of my career, the first phase when I was at Ernst & Young, I see it as so foundational. You know, I learned a lot of things about myself and about how I am as a professional when I was in that role. So I joined the teams in Silicon Valley. We worked with a lot of Fortune 100 technology companies. IT audit consulting around different technology matters, right? Security, privacy was a big thing when I was in the firms at the time. And I found really great mentors within the company. I found a lot of great career growth opportunities it was exactly what I wanted, right? I did the work. I worked with my mentors and people in the company, and I said, hey, like, this is where I want my career to go. This is where I see the opportunities in the job that I'm in. And I made it happen, you know? And so at the time the only reason that I jumped out it wasn't that I wasn't growing. It was actually at the time, there were a lot of other opportunities within Silicon Valley that were calling to me. So before I started Decrypt Compliance, I was actually after Ernst & Young, I was at Salesforce. And I also worked at Tencent. All huge companies, right? Ernst & Young, huge company. Salesforce, huge, like global companies with a big footprint, a lot of people and a lot of really robust processes. And I loved each of those experiences for different reasons. When I was at Ernst & Young, I feel like I learned the craft of audit and consulting, right? The IT business, what does it look like to work with clients, to be client serving? And then also just a strong sense of professionalism, right? Self-accountability for how you carry yourself as a professional. How do you come off to others? How do you make sure that you're putting other people's needs right front and center? When I left Ernst & Young to go to Salesforce, that was the first time that I worked internally, so to speak, right? Because my role at Ernst & Young was client serving. I was deployed out to clients. I was working with them. I was helping them. But now it was, okay, how do we take that IT security compliance, privacy compliance knowledge and apply that to help the business grow internally? Also good experiences because, that helped me see how IT plays a role within a company. That helps me see how security plays a role within a company. That helped me understand kind of the dynamics, right? The dynamics between working within your own team, working with other teams, working with leadership, reporting, and all of those things. What does that look like?
And having to work with the consultants from EY who come in because that's who you
right?
work.
Yeah, the tables turn, right? And so I had the chance to sit in different positions around the table, around this.
So you're saying that's really valuable. Like
so valuable.
For anybody who's listening and they're an early career professional, maybe they're thinking about starting a company, you're saying like, hey, you know what? Maybe it would be valuable for you to potentially continue in a career path for a while because you're going to gain some things like mentors you talked about and direct business experience. Have you always been from EY through Salesforce, and we haven't hit Tencent yet or on, but have you always been in the IT security space? Like, is that the space from EY on?
Okay. IT, governance, risk, and compliance, specialized in security and privacy, and most recently, AI matters. So I would say that when I started, when I was coming out of university and entering Ernst & Young, I thought this is a great place to be. It is a great place where I feel like I'm growing, I'm being pushed, I'm learning a lot about myself and about the profession and the field. I wasn't sure where it was going to go next. I thought that maybe I'd spend 5, 10, 15 years at Ernst & Young because they actually showed a path for growth there.
Wait, pause. What is the time frame? What is the time period between Ernst & Young and, through Salesforce and Tencent?
I was at Ernst & Young for about 6 years as my first job.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was at Salesforce for about 2, and then Tencent for 1. So you can see that I got a little bit more excited. I wanted to see I wanted to see the world in other positions, more and more. The transition from Ernst & Young to Salesforce was compensation. It was compensation, Nash. At the time, the macroeconomic factors, Silicon Valley, technology sector, the comp was amazing, right? And I also, it was personal stuff. I got engaged to now she's my wife. We have a 1-year-old. And so part of it was, I was making a life change. And I thought that I was ready for my career to take a back seat to other parts of my life, right?
You're screwed now.
Right. Yeah, it's totally different now. And again, like if I were to go back in time and tell myself, this is how your career and your life is going to progress, I would have said, really? Like, why? That doesn't quite make as much sense, right? But no, so there was a life change at that point. And I was working at Salesforce and I thought, hey, I'm growing in a different position. I did get that. The reason I switched over was not because the work conditions didn't make sense. It wasn't that I wasn't growing, but it was actually, I was ready for more. I thought that I wanted to, I didn't think that career played a big part in my life at that point, but I realized it does. It does. There was this energy that I was getting from working at Ernst & Young, which was such a dynamic work environment, and I wanted more of that. So I joined Tencent in their global operations, their global IT team. And at the time, the organization was trying to basically get their arms around global operations.
Okay.
Anywhere
still
outside
an internal team, right? Not a consulting role,
right.
An internal team, and you're helping that team to get their arms around global.
Right, but it was focused on expansion.
Okay.
So Tencent as a global company has a really strong presence in China.
Yeah.
And I joined the global team, which at the time their goal was to expand their presence and get a little bit of their arms around all of the different offices and subsidiaries and teams globally outside of China. And they had offices in all continents. So I was in there working in IT in security and privacy compliance. And so the common trope in IT is always chasing after the business, right? The business is out there, they're building their products, they're building their services, they're growing, and IT is trying to keep up.
Is that like in a parade, the guys who follow the horses?
Yeah.
Is it like
absolutely,
that?
Absolutely. So IT always has that challenge. Now, we're in security and privacy, which is, again, like that subset within IT that is trying to add a little bit more security and safety for the company around IT, right? So we were chasing IT, who was chasing the business. So the dynamics of the role, right? Our CIO was giving us new objectives every couple of weeks, and that opened up my mind to the idea of, hey, the plan does not always have to be the plan, right? You set it, you see how it goes, and you adjust as quickly as you can, right? Once you get new information, you make those adjustments. And that really opened my eyes to the idea that, when just because there's ambiguity in what you're doing doesn't mean that you're not headed in the right direction. And, when I took on that job, I thought that I'd be really stressed out by that ambiguity. And I thought that I wouldn't be able to handle that.
Yeah.
But I realized that I'm capable of taking on more challenges than I give myself credit for. So after about a year there, I looked around and I said, well, what else can I do to continue growing? Right. Yeah. So I can start getting more and more comfortable with ambiguity. And that's where Decrypt Compliance came, right?
That's incredible. I just have to pause at ambiguity for a minute, because that's a hidden skill that founders really need, especially startup founders who are trying to build something where they have to live in ambiguity and, like iteration all the time.
100%.
And it's so cool you brought that up, because I've interviewed a few people and we've talked about founder skills, things that are important for founders to have when they, start a company. And we've talked about things like flexibility, agility, leadership, things like that. But this ambiguity sense, or this sense of like ambiguity and not being afraid of it, this is the first time that I've had somebody actually express it this way.
Yeah.
So that led you to thinking like, hey, I can do this? Or what was it? Now you were transitioning us to the startup.
Right. So that was the will, right? That was the will of, hey, I'm interested. I think this is going to be a challenge that I will grow from, right? And I want to take on that challenge. The will was there. So the question was, what was the way? So I started Decrypt Compliance a little bit over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago is when I formed the business entity within the state. But the question was, what is the combination of experiences and skills that I've acquired that I can really put to good use in this business? And so from working in governance, risk, and compliance in IT as a consultant, as an external service provider, as an auditor, plus working internally at Fortune 100 companies, I saw that I had this actually a very unique blend of skills that if I went back into professional services and started a professional services firm in this field, I'd actually have a distinct competitive advantage, because a lot of what I saw was a lot of folks who are in this field today, competitors of Decrypt Compliance, they tend to be guys who have been on the consultant side for years and years and years. Yeah. And we see this at Ernst & Young, right? There's a lot of folks who they start as, new employee out of college and they just stay in that firm for 20 some years. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that they have, but they may not have that outsider's perspective, right? And so I think that's what I bring with Decrypt Compliance is we actually work with our clients and we understand them because we were literally there.
Yeah,
right?
Internally and externally.
So we know what this field looks like from all positions, right? And that helps us really advise them the best.
Well, let me ask a question, because a lot of startup founders, they put the cart before the horse and they say, I'm going to build something and then I'm going to go out and see if I can find some customers for it. And this is a deadly trap that startup founders fall into all the time. They think, I have an idea, I'm going to build this thing, and then I'm going to go and try and get people to buy it. It sounds like you actually had the advantage of knowing, like, I already know who the customers are. I already know what they want. I already know what they need. And now all I have to do is put it together and give it to them. Is that true? Or was there an element of like, you have to build something new, or you had to find customer product market fit? Was there any element of that at all?
It's more knowns than unknowns.
Okay.
And the way I thought about it was, because I know the field from a few different angles, I have a pretty good sense of where the client challenges are and how we can address those things. But I think it's one thing to know what the solution is, and another thing to be able to get the solution to the customer, right? So distribution is definitely one thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking through. How do we get our message out there? How do we find our clients? How do we make sure that our clients know who we are? Because once they get to know us and once they work with us, they see right away that it is the right choice.
Yeah,
right?
that sounds like marketing 101.
Right, exactly.
It's like,
exactly.
hey, we're here.
Yeah,
I
we
need
exist.
like, if you come in, you'll fall in love with us.
Yeah.
And they're like, who are you?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're here and we exist.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's keep moving now into Decrypt Compliance. So you've started this company. You've invested some money in this yourself. Did you get anyone else to invest money in you? Friends, family, angels, anything at all? Is this totally bootstrapped yourself, or?
It's would you call, so we needed to get a loan to get started.
Okay.
Right. But no, we didn't seek private equity or VC funding, and that was a personal decision. I mean, number one, it's what is the business idea, and then number two, how do you want to run the business, right? And one thing that has been a breath of fresh air for me has been making all the decisions without that external influence, right? And so, like you said earlier, the founders who want to go out there and they have this idea and then they get VC funding, you got to make sure that the visions are aligned, right? And you got to make sure that where you're trying to go is where your partners want to go, and is there alignment, right? You don't want to be in a position where that's not lining up and you feel pulled in different directions, right? So for me, it's been careful, methodical growth to make sure that things are successful. But it was also that for me, I had confidence. I had confidence that with that finite amount of runway, we can be successful.
And you, I asked you earlier if you were a solo founder or if you had co-founders, and you said, nope, just me. Just the founder. So you don't have anyone else to run anything by. On the one hand, it's awesome because you can make all the decisions. You can take the business anywhere you want. But on the other hand, it's got to be like a heavy load sometimes. Do you ever feel like, man, I got the whole thing on my back?
There's a lot of that. I will say that I have support systems, right? And I think every founder needs to make sure that they know where their support system is and what it is and how do they tap into that. So there are a couple, CEO friend groups that I've joined into so that we can, bounce ideas off of each other once in a while. I definitely find ways to recharge without thinking about the business all the time, right? Family and friends. But in terms of, being a sole founder, part of it was a choice. Part of it was not a choice for me. My field is a highly regulated field. It requires people with certain level of credentials, certain amount of experience. And so when I started the firm, I looked around and said, well, who do I know that, that has the same vision as I do with those credentials? And I didn't want to go into that search and procrastinate from getting started because I knew I wanted to get started first. And so that's part of it. I mean,
and you didn't look around and say, I have these skills and I'm missing a few things and I'd like somebody to fill those in. You felt you had confidence because you had done all these pieces. It was almost like you have a jigsaw puzzle in front of you and you're like, everybody stand back. I'm going to work on putting this puzzle together. Like I got it.
We'll figure out the different pieces, right? And that's not to say that I don't have outside help, right? I found, advisors, I've worked with certain agencies who can help provide input in certain areas. But a lot of it has been trial and error. And that's really one of I'd say the biggest thing that I've really learned in the past couple of years is keeping the most important things, right? And getting started my head was looking at, I tend to be a perfectionist. And so when I got started, I was like, hey, I gotta do this. Marketing has to be like this. Sales has to be like this. Operations needs to look like this, and I gave myself permission to not be perfect in all those areas and say, hey, right now, sales is the number one thing. Right now, operations and customer service, that is the most important thing. How do we build those systems, right?
Wait. Before you move from that,
yeah,
you got to tell us a story. Like, what was probably one of the worst decisions you made early on that you're like, I'm not going to say you regret it, but was it probably a good learning opportunity? But what was a decision you made where you're like, yeah, Mash, I did it. I made that decision.
Oh, that is a good one. Let me take a minute to think about this one.
Because you talked about hiring agencies and people to help you and stuff. I know from having done a lot of interviews and I swear I've talked to thousands of founders. Oftentimes they will fall instantly in love with somebody because of their personality, and that person will be like, hey, give me 20% equity, $250,000, I'm going to solve all of your problems. Yep. And they do it and they realize like, wow, I just got taken by, these people. I mean, it is Silicon Valley, you know what I mean? They're called sharks for a reason. And I'm just wondering, did you have any of those experiences? And combined with your experience, you told me earlier with Ernst & Young and having mentors and real people who cared about you and your career path versus maybe some people who, saw like, hey, a new founder,
exactly.
maybe they take anything like that come up?
I want to say, as a founder, the area that I continuously struggle in is actually marketing. Okay. Marketing is actually a struggle for me. It's not, I'm okay, right? But that is the thing that I've spent so much time and energy to learning and practicing and really trying to embody. Yeah. And so early on, there were a couple agencies that I worked with for marketing, right? And they sold me everything. They said, hey, you have a good idea. Like all we got to do is just a couple of these things here and there, and then we're off to the races, right? And for me, it was understanding, well, how much homework and how much clear strategy, how much planning should I have before we work with an agency, right? And what I realized was I worked with one too soon. I didn't have as much of a plan as I could have in order to make sure that these agencies were successful in making me successful. Yeah. Right. That was the challenge. And I got oversold. Yeah. I think that was, a learning lesson.
Yeah. Right? That's a great point in that there are a set of milestones that you kind of need to attain, which make it so that the people who you bring in at that time are more effective. Exactly. Like you said, with marketing, if you bring in an agency too early, well, they're going to spend all their time trying to figure out what your whole strategy, communications, architecture, brand, like everything, instead of like, go get me, make people aware of me and start landing some leads and stuff like that.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. It's figuring out when's the right time to bring someone in for a certain process or a system that you've set up. Yeah.
So if marketing is your weak point, what's your strength? What have you discovered about yourself in the last 2 years where you're like, you know what, man, I know this now. Like this is my, superpower. Yeah.
And I think it's more something that I've thought that I've known about myself, and it is continuing to be validated. It's having empathy for the clients, for customers, for others. And just, I'm a huge techie. And so injecting technology and automation and AI into the right areas of the business, those are the areas that I've been passionate about. Yeah. I love doing, and it's going well, right? So working with clients, that's part of why I started the firm. Is I love working with clients. I love helping people solve their challenges. But I love it. I love doing that in the most modern way possible, right? Which is one of the reasons why I started the firm. Is I took a look around and I saw, hey, there are many ways that technology can improve the way that this business runs to provide better outcomes for clients. Mm-hmm. How do we do that, right? And if I don't know who's doing that, can I do that?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And your experience working in big, EY versus, and even big organizations too, because Salesforce is enormous and Tencent and stuff. It gives you this perspective of like they want to do it, but they're okay kind of moving slowly and sort of like they got a ton of money to spend and they got time, or I don't know what it is about the larger companies where they feel like they have some time to move, but now you're scrappy, you're a startup, you can move really quickly, you can test stuff out. Let's get into the AI a little bit.
Yeah.
When I met you, we were at an event. It was an AI event here in town, and we were talking about how AI is being used in compliance to help your customers. So there's two things I want to talk about with you. One is how you can use AI to help your customers. The other thing that I want to get into, if we have time, is how you might use AI actually internally to help yourself operationally with sales, marketing, finance, whatever it is. Just because I know that a lot of founders actually don't know if they're not an AI startup, but they can still use AI to help their startup, right? So let's go first into AI and what you figured out on how you can use it in your company to help your customers.
Right. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, AI, and I think any technology that we're thinking about today, the first thing first is to think about data, right? Where does the data live, right? And if you don't have the data, how do you capture the data? Now, how we're thinking about the ways that AI can help us deliver better client experiences, it's a couple things. One, it's bringing all the different signals or data points that we have about our clients into a singular location, right? And what comes to people's mind is CRM, right? Maybe it's CRM, maybe it's something like. But the point is, collect the data that you need if we don't have it, and get it into one place, right? And then from there, get a little bit more creative about what would you want to know if there were no limits? What would you do if there were no limits for your clients, right? What data points do you need to do that, and can you go collect that?
Can I pause for a second?
Yeah.
Because I think the way it was traditionally done may still be done this way. Just for the listeners, is that you would gather all this data, maybe potentially stick it in some kind of data lake or some kind of SQL server or whatever, and then someone would have to go in with and write SQL to try and pull out whenever somebody wanted data. Is that true? This is how it used to be done, and maybe is still done.
Right, exactly.
It's a lot of SQL queries to get data, figure out.
Yeah. So if we want to, talking more specifically about data, right? Is it in structured relational data, right? Like in a database, or do you have this data somewhere else? So the way that foundational LLM models work, the large language models work, it can take all sorts of data types, right? It doesn't have to be data that sits cleanly in a database. Yeah. Maybe it's a transcript, a meeting transcript, or you got some notes, or you have these images, or you have this video, and so that unlocks a lot of different opportunities, right? Because the time that it's going to take to review and pull information out of that file type is so much faster. The new companies, I think, are in such a good position to do this, right? Because if you think about a company that's been around for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you have processes, you have certain tools or systems that aren't designed for that, right? You're storing data in a different way. You have people who are trained to use and follow processes a different way. Yep. And so there's a lot of unlearning that companies have to do in order to get the full value out of AI. And newer companies, I think, are at a great advantage because when you're starting out, you can change, right? If previously you were, keeping your data here and this place, it's so much easier to just say, well, let's just put it all in one place. Okay, like we can do that now.
Are you talking about your clients are newer companies? Like you actually specialize in helping newer companies as opposed to the older, larger Fortune 500 type? Who is your customer actually?
Oh, that's a good question. Today, we work with a lot of startups and small, medium business, SMBs, right? Okay. The ones who are looking for ways to build trust with their end customers, whether the customer has concerns around security or privacy or usage of AI.
What's an example of that? Like, you don't have to tell me what the customer's name is, but what's a type of customer that would be a really great fit for your company?
Right. Companies that have some sort of software that they sell to other businesses.
Okay.
They're gonna eventually get to that question with their customers. Customer's gonna ask, how do I know that your software is secure? How do I know your service is secure? If you're in a regulated industry that handles personally identifiable information, right? What confidence do I have that if I use your service, the data that I'm putting in there is protected? Right?
Got it. Like 1,000 healthcare startups right now.
Exactly.
In Silicon Valley, healthcare is a huge one. Education, ed tech is another huge one. There's startups all over Silicon Valley who are in these spaces. They may not even know that they need you yet. They're just trying to grow, and they're growing, and they're onboarding 1 million, new users or whatever.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I could get in so much trouble.
Yeah. And the question around when is a good time to work with a company like Decrypt Compliance, it depends on the company and the customers that you're working with. If you're working with smaller businesses, it's quite often that, you might show them your product and they say, this is great, let me try it out, right? And they're instant in. When you start working with larger companies is when they do have a little bit more due diligence before they make that purchase, before they actually start using your stuff in production, right? So they'll have all these different checks. And it's quite common that at the security checks, they'll say, hey, do you have any sort of independent reporting or independent certifications, that I can really hang my hat on and say, okay, like they are doing the right things, right? Besides whatever, the sales guy is going to say. And that's where we come in, right? We're an authorized, accredited, independent body that helps to provide that confidence. We broker that trust between you and the customer.
Interesting. I have mentored several startups that came out of the university, and they were building apps, and the apps were growing, and they were getting a lot of traction. And they said, hey, we really want to see if we can partner with San Jose State University or any of the Cal State universities or the UCs or anything. As soon as they knocked on that door, the first thing that came up was, we need valid verification. We need certification that you pass. I don't even know what they are. You probably know what they are, but there are certain things. They said, you need to make sure, that it's privacy is blah, blah, blah. Security is this and that. And there were forms, and they went in and they actually started to do the research, and they found that it could get incredibly complicated for them to get this information just to be approved as a vendor for the university. Is that what you're talking about?
100%. Yeah. So what Decrypt Compliance does is we help with various aspects of that process, right? It's essentially that handshake between you and your customer when it comes to security concerns. It looks different for different customers, right? So everybody kind of has their own process, but it's the due diligence that they're doing, right? Whether they maybe they're going to send you a questionnaire with a whole bunch of different things that they want you to respond on and share a little bit more information. They might be looking for independent auditors, assurance reports, or certifications. But essentially, any time that it would be useful to build trust with your customer around different technology matters, you can always work with a company like Decrypt Compliance to bring in that confidence, right? Because it's you don't have to take my word for it, right? Here's an independent party that we trust, right? We know that they do good things in the marketplace. They're reputable. They have integrity. Let's make sure that they can do these checks.
It sounds like any government agency, like if your company, I'm a software company and I have a SaaS and I want to sell my SaaS to a government agency, they're going to ask for it. 100%. Any educational institution is going to ask for it. Any healthcare, because of PII, all these things, they're going to ask for it. What do they do now? What do people do today? Do they have to hire internal compliance people to do all of it for them? Like, how do they solve these problems today?
It's a blend. A lot of folks will have in-house compliance experts. Whether they're IT compliance or
if they're venture funded and they have a ton of money to spend on it.
Right, but here's the thing, right? You can never break the boundary of we have this independent party who's going to help to validate, right? Exactly, an independent party to broker that relationship and broker that trust between the two parties is something that just from a design standpoint, right? It's useful to have. Some of the common frameworks that we work with a lot of clients on. from a security perspective. There's SOC 2, which is super, super valuable for a lot of companies doing work within the US. Companies working internationally, ISO 27001 is a standard that's very, very common to help broker that trust and security. In the healthcare industry, we think about security and we think about personally identifiable information. So we help a lot of clients with concerns around HIPAA compliance. And one of the other frameworks that has been growing in popularity within the healthcare industry is high trust, they call it. So that is a framework that helps ensure security across a lot of different areas, including healthcare considerations.
Yeah. Is there an element of growing concern due to AI?
In a lot of different ways. Yes. And a lot of companies are trying to, from a vendor due diligence perspective, when they're buying new softwares or services, they've also been trying to figure out, well, how does that fit into the current due diligence process? So some companies, they incorporate, concerns around AI into general security. Other companies or organizations have split out and they said, okay, we're going to do a security due diligence. Once we complete that, we're going to jump into the AI due diligence, right? So it depends on the customers that you're going to be working with. But end of the day, it's the same process of they want to know something. They want confidence that you're doing the right things. First, you want to get alignment of what are the right things? What do the right things look like? And then how do you give them that confidence, right? Is it a certification? Is it an independent auditor's report? And right now, I think the language around responsible AI and AI that people trust is still being defined. It took a really long time for us as a society to really understand what security, IT security, what that really means. It's taken some time for us to understand and have the vocabulary around what data privacy looks like, right? Like HIPAA privacy, GDPR privacy. So now the question is, when you think about AI, what do we want AI to look like? What does responsible AI look like, right? So a lot of companies are still learning this. Some of the common frameworks that have come out from authoritative bodies who, they bring in experts globally to really put their heads together and condense this into one cohesive framework or way of thinking. ISO 42001 is one of those frameworks. So 42001, that is a framework for responsible AI management systems. So that's something that we've been working with a lot of clients on recently, helping them to first, take a step back and say, okay, what are we doing with AI? When we think about what responsible AI looks like, right? What are the core tenets of what the definition of responsible AI looks like? And how do we get ourselves on the path towards doing best practices so that we can show clients and customers that we're putting our best foot forward, that we're actually thinking about these things on their behalf? So one of the things that I've learned from years of being a founder is that there are two types of people, and then there's a blend of them too, but there's two basic types of people or clients. There are the ones that they want to learn what they need to learn. And then there's the ones that just need to do what they need to do. Exactly. And so the people who come to you, are they coming to you to solve problems for them? Like, look, I don't care how you do it. Just get me the papers. I need the government contract, figure it out. Or are most of them coming to you saying, look, this world is ambiguous and I actually want you to do it, but I want to learn, like you were saying, what is responsible AI? What is, private information? What is you? Are you an educator as much as you are a doer? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an evolving story, right? For us, we have a mix of clients. I mean, I call it two customer personas, right? We have one persona who says, I want to get it done, right? Help me figure out how do we get this done? Let's just go, right? Tell me what we need to do and we're going to do it. Got it. And then we have the other persona who says, hey, I got this problem. I'm trying to figure it out, right? Help me understand, help me get comfortable with those decisions, and then we'll move forward. In terms of how we deliver the work, it looks a little bit different, right? But the end result for both are the same, is that they're going to have a good experience. They're going to feel that their needs are met. And their customers trust their business more. Got it. They're going to get that certificate that says we have been audited and we are compliant. Absolutely. Okay, let's end with 3 tips that you have, a small or medium business that's sort of just
starting out to figure out this compliance issue?
No. Yes. So the first things first is I would recommend like take a step back. Um, Stuff that is in contracts, like you have context and understand the customer that you're working with, the prospect that you're working with, right? To what extent is the stuff written in the contracts deal breakers or negotiable, right? And this is stuff that you may not know right away unless you have a relationship. Maybe you have someone close within the company that you talk to, right? But to what extent are these terms fixed in stone? Are they requirements? And also, to what extent are each of the terms what's the priority, right? Some of these requirements are nice to haves, although they're listed as requirements. Some of them are more important than others, right? Some of these can move. A lot of the larger organizations, these contracts are more often than not, they're templatized, they're boilerplates, and it's the starting point, right? So the second thing is understand your positioning.
Okay, wait, before you go to the second thing, let me understand the first one. The first one is read your contract,
Yes.
figure out what is required, nice to have, or potentially just stuck in from a template that maybe could be taken out. So first, have the conversation and read your contract and figure out, because sometimes what you're saying is that you thought it was a requirement, maybe it's a nice to have. So first figure that part out.
Yes.
Okay, number two.
Yeah. What's on paper is not always what must be there.
Okay.
Right? That's number one. Number two, understand your positioning with the customer, right? And you're doing this already in your sales conversation, but think about what are all the different leverage points for the conversation. Security requirements, they, from my experience, they tend to be towards the tail end of the conversation. What it means is that it's more likely than not that you may not have thought about that area. Hopefully you are now. Your customer may not have thought about that area just yet either. And there is a risk that because it's not on their radar, it could be a blocker that neither of you expected, right? So I would say be a little bit more proactive. If you see anywhere, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, that compliance considerations, needing those assurances from some other party that you are doing the right things, if you think that could be a concern, work with the partner early on. Because the earlier you reach out, the earlier you get connected, the easier it is to share context with them, your service provider or your consultant, your advisor. They can help you navigate the conversation as well, right? Yeah. Not just answering the problem of, how do we get the certification, but helping you navigate the conversation, right? Which is a whole nother thing.
Got it. So remember that they want to do business with you.
Yeah, 100%.
You do have some leverage in the thing, but if you can be prepared early and understand, like, are there security, compliance, privacy issues that might come up at the tail end? If you're prepared, you're going to be able to keep the momentum going and be able to work through this thing better. So don't wait till the last minute to go, oh my God, I need a compliance audit.
100%.
Just like think about it ahead of time. Okay, great. I love it. So that's one. And then two is to be prepared. Know that you are, this could come up at the tail end. The last tip, what's the last thing you want to tell somebody, who's just they just heard about this compliance issue and they're like, oh man, I really want this deal. I don't know if it's worth it.
Right. The last one is, so when I was at Ernst & Young, I worked with a lot of clients who, when they heard the term auditor, when they heard the term certifications, that made people anxious, right? They're like, what are you going to look at? What's going to happen, right? And my last tip would be, similar to when you're searching for, a good lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. Your audit firm, your consulting firm, like, be transparent with them. Like, find the team that you feel comfortable being open and transparent with, because that's going to be how they help you the most. Similar to like the lawyers, right? The lawyers need to know what's going on so they can help you figure out the best solution. Yeah. And it's the same in this situation as well. We're an independent party, but we get it, right? We understand that compliance and all these things, it's foreign to like everybody outside of this field,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so there's no harm in saying, hey, I don't have all the answers. This is what we're doing today. This is how it's working. I don't understand this, right? The more open that you can be with your consultant, with your auditor, the more that they can figure out what's going to be the clearest path and smoothest solution.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know people who go to the hospital, lie to their doctor because they don't want the doctor to tell them what's wrong with
Right.
them. And I'm like, dude, why did you just,
Right.
this isn't going to help you if you're not
Right.
honest.
You got to be honest with first you have to be ready to be honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge. You have to be honest with yourself first, and then feel comfortable working with, find the person that you're comfortable being honest with.
Yeah. That's awesome. Raymond, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a great discussion. I learned a lot about compliance. Good luck with Decrypt and with your startup. And I hope to interview you again, as we start to get a little bit more momentum and learn more about what you're up to. So thank you.
Ash, thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.